So by way of introduction to Heather, and then probably afterwards you and I will talk a little bit. Much of life is routine. We get up, get out of bed after a while, wash our face, brush our teeth, comb our hair, what's left of it, and we're on with our day. We take care of our kids, we go to work, we take care of the house, we do our chores, we go shopping, we eat, we come home in the evening, we eat some more, we rest, repeat the next day. Much of life is routine. You know it, I know it. And yet within that routine, God is present. And the challenge, I think, for all of us is as we go through the routine of our lives, which is part of living, to recognize and see what God is doing. Much of life is routine. And that's the case for the life of a priest, too. I get up in the morning just like all of you. I groan just like all of you. Wash my face, brush my hair, brush my teeth, get ready, pray, say Mass, eat breakfast, go through the daily routine. And such was the case 9 years ago. Got up, did all those things, said Mass, went to the office, answered the emails, answered the phone calls. Oh, there's a phone call. Somebody named Heather and Chad, we want their house blessed. Okay, I do house blessings, that's what I do, routine. Schedule it out, go to their house, do the house blessing. It happened. Had a lovely conversation afterward, very nice, beautiful new house. Complimented them on the house. See you later. Have a nice day. On with my day. And yet, in there, despite myself, the seeds that were planted grew. And God worked. And for me, just looking back as a priest, and I know those of you who've raised children perhaps have had the same thought, teaching these kids all these things. Do they ever listen to what I'm having to say? Do they actually listen to what I'm saying to them? Does this make any sense? As a priest, too, I plant seeds, I speak and talk about the Lord. I need to follow Him myself. And sometimes the thought gets into my mind, are these people listening to me at Mass? Or are they just thinking about going out to eat chicken afterwards? Do they actually listen? Am I listening? And then every so often one turns the corner and says, oh my goodness, it works. God works in your life and in mine. Not always in the big grand things, but more often in the daily routine, taking up our cross, following the Lord, striving to grow in holiness, the sanctification of our work, which is really what it is. The work, your daily routines, whether it's changing a baby, mowing the lawn, shoveling, caring for a house, caring for a sick loved one, preparing a homily, doing a house blessing, whatever it is, the daily routine, God is present. And if you and I could just see that, we might be able to catch a glimpse of what the Lord Jesus is doing. And our faith will be strengthened. My challenge for all of us, and for myself, is to not allow our daily routine to become routine, but to see it as an opportunity of God's presence. To see it as an opportunity when we're going shopping to smile that smile at the clerk who's wearing a frown, who's probably struggling. Caring for our next door neighbor even when they talk our ear off. There's a million things we'd rather do. Standing up for our faith with our children, or our grandchildren, when they think us to be rather odd that we're Catholic. To spend that extra time in prayer when there's a million different distractions that we want to do. The daily routine, daily living life is usually where we find God. And sometimes we can see that in that daily routine there's an entire world that's opened up to us. That, I think, was the experience that Heather had in her life, and I'm very happy and honored and privileged to have had a small part in it. So as we continue this evening, I invite you just to think about the moments in your life where that God comes in and that you can really reach a person, not by something big, huge, but just an act of charity, doing your job, by being faithful, doing it prayerfully. If we do that, we're in for the adventure of a lifetime, which is the spiritual life. I am very honored and privileged to present to you Heather Weininger.
Well, thank you, Father Girardi. A person all those years ago who I had no idea who was coming to my home that day. It's amazing to me how one event has this huge impact on your life. The day he came to our home, I wasn't looking to change faith. I was perfectly happy being the Methodist that I was. My husband, I'm not really sure what he was. My husband grew up in a household, his parents were divorced. Going to Sunday school and church was not an important activity for them. I grew up in a house where my parents were high school sweethearts. They married each other while they were in college. My mom dropped out of college to have my brother after they were married. And when they got married, they were the first people in their small town to have a Lutheran minister and a Methodist minister marry them. This was big stuff back in the day. Like, that was, not heard of. So when children came around into my parents' family, we were all baptized Lutheran. So just so you know, I've tried out just about everything. But happy to say I'm comfortable and happy where I am now as a Catholic. And I couldn't be happier, so I was baptized Lutheran. My parents decided there were some things happening on in the Lutheran church at that time. They weren't exactly happy about it. So when we moved to Green Bay, they decided, well, your mom's Methodist, why don't we try out the Methodist church here? Let's see what that's all about. So that's where we started. And my parents had been members there for nearly 34 years. I went to Sunday school every Sunday there. I was involved in the youth group. I went to the church camp. I did everything. I loved it. And that's what I was brought up in. And that's what I knew. There was never a question of God in our house. We always knew that. I was confirmed there. My husband and I were actually married at that church, which we'll get to again because Father Girardi helped us with that too, to have a recognized marriage in the church. But for me, my faith was always something I had. It's not something I had to go out and find and be reborn again. I always had the faith. My husband was, a little bit wishy-washy. He knew what faith was, but wasn't in the same area as I was. But I'll get to kind of where I am with him a little bit later in the story. Because I think it's important to understand becoming Catholic was not something that was easy for me to do with my parents' support. My parents, as they grew up, it was a different world. It was really different in their day and age, being Catholic and what was expected and what you were told versus what it is today. So my parents had this ideology of what it means to be Catholic. You pray to Mary, you can't pray straight to God. And now, so keep with me here, because these are all the things I learned as I grew up. Like, why? I can pray straight to God. Like, he hears me right away. I don't need that inner person, the middleman in this. I don't understand why we all can't have the sacrament when we go to Mass with them. They tell us that we're going to hell if we're not Catholic and if we don't believe in certain things. So that was my parents' mentality as I began my journey. But how did Father Girardi even end up at my door? That's a real question. So I've got my faith. And it was good. And let me tell you some other things about my faith in my life. When I was in high school and when I was going into college, I had a severe eating disorder. I was anorexic. I probably should have been hospitalized, but at the time I was 18 and I fought my parents and I thought, you were just the most horrible human beings, you're not going to help me. But you know what I did fall back on during that time was God. I still went to church, I still prayed, but there was a night when I said enough is enough, I don't really want to be part of this world anymore. I made a phone call to my sister who was at the time living in Utah going to grad school. I was down in Madison. It was the middle of the night and I told her, this is just going to be the end. She of course immediately picks up the phone, calls my parents and was like, Mom, Dad, you got to get down there like ASAP. She called my roommate, said, you keep Heather, keep an eye on her. So my parents come down the next morning, early, and it's a Sunday morning. And I wasn't at the apartment. So my parents thought, oh my gosh, where has she gone? What's happened to her? Well, I was actually at church. It was Sunday morning. So I was at church. So my parents actually had to wait for me to remove me and bring me home where I could get some serious day-to-day help for my eating disorder and for my depression that I was suffering. And they thought, gosh, here's this kid going through all this, but she's still at church. So she still has faith. So if she's got faith and she made that phone call to her sister, it really means she wants to be here. And that was her cry for help. And it was my cry for help. And it was at that point in my life where, lights were starting to go on, like, okay, God's still here with me. I can get through this. I'm going to get better. And then life just happened. I went to school. I wanted to be a dentist. I was down in Madison. I clearly am not a dentist, if anyone notices. My husband probably wishes I was, went back to be a dentist so he could retire early, but that's not going to happen because I love what I do now. But I believe now, looking back on my life, I realize all these things were happening for a reason. But I didn't know it until I started looking back on, I wasn't meant to go to Marquette. I wasn't meant to become a dentist. He had all these plans for me, but I just didn't know what my plans were going to be yet. And I still don't know what my future plans are that he has planned for me. So when I was at school and I had come home, my parents thought I was well enough that I could go back to school if I wanted to down in Madison. But I thought, maybe I'll just give it a little bit more time at home. And while I was at school in Madison, I was actually a Senate page at the state capitol here. And I met some people that said, you know what, there's this congressman or something up in Green Bay, he's got an opening for a job. You really should think about applying. It's okay if you leave school for a little bit and do this. And I thought, well, why not? I mean, what do I have to lose, right? It's not like I've got anything big going on in my life. So I had an interview. It was for a job in Antigo, Wisconsin. The person who interviewed me for my job is now my husband. So, how does that work out in life? However, according to note, he actually didn't give me the job. Yeah, I know, I still married the guy, that's weird. Maybe he had good insight about me, I don't know. So I didn't get the job. So I was like, okay, I'm going back to Madison, not a big deal. But I didn't know that he actually told the chief of staff that she would be awful in Antigo. There's no way this girl would make it in Antigo, but she'd be awesome in DC. So I got a phone call, and 3 days later, I packed my bags, and my parents were in moments of panic, like, oh my gosh, she's not healthy enough, there's no way now she's going to be thousands of miles away from us, she doesn't know anyone out there. But I was like, hey, let's give it a whirl. I mean, what else can happen? I mean, I feel good, I know my therapist, I can give her a call, she's a phone call away, I can always come home if it doesn't work out. So I went, some people, again, it's like Father Girardi coming to my door. I had no idea what he looked like, didn't know who he was. Well, strangers picked me up at the airport, and a new life for me began. And I worked out there for a couple years before I dated a lot of people who I had told myself, you know what, I'm just never going to get married. I'm good being out here in DC, single, not a big deal. And then one day, our chief of staff said to me, you know, that Chad guy, he's a good one. You should date him. I was like, oh, you're right. He would really, like, someone that would be awesome. Chad and I only knew each other from working together. It's not like we ever hung out on a regular basis. So I knew little about him, other than he was fun on staff retreats. That's about all I knew about him. And he was always missing. We could never find him in the office because he liked to go on scavenger hunts or something that we're not sure of. And he still does that to this day. So then we started dating, and during this time when I lived in DC, lots of stuff happened. September 11th. I worked in a house office building across the street. And now I'm looking back at things that should be like, oh, lights going on. So September 11th happens on Tuesday. That Friday there was a gathering, a memorial service, and it was at a Catholic church. There's lots of churches on Capitol Hill. Could have been at any church. Happened to be a Catholic one. We all went. Again, I didn't think anything of it at that time. So that happens. Anthrax happens. The DC sniper happens. Finally, my parents were like, oh my gosh, are you ever going to leave that city of horribleness? And I did. I came back because I got married to Chad when he asked me to get married to him. There was never a discussion at this point of what faith, where we would get married. Obviously, I was Methodist. We're getting married at the Methodist church. At that time, he really liked the pastor we had there. I did too. I mean, he had been part of my life for years at this point. So, you know, we'd go do the pre-marriage classes. We'd get married. As we're about to get married, he's like, you know, I think my grandma goes to this church. I was like, wow, like big news flash. Like, I'm marrying you, and you think your grandma goes to the same church like that I grew up in my whole life, but you're not really sure? Yeah, I'm pretty sure I came to my grandpa's funeral here. Like, this is the amount of faith communication that we had at this point in our life, which probably really isn't so great as you're getting married, right? Like, you think maybe like finances, your faith, if you have children, how are you going to raise them? Probably would be topics of conversation you should have, but wasn't much. I mean, at that point, that's what I was, that's what we're going to be. In our early marriage, it was more, he came to church with my family on Christmas and Easter, so he was definitely a priester. He just didn't come with us. His dad is Catholic, so you should also know this. His dad is Catholic, but when his parents were divorced, it was you don't really need to go get confirmed. It's your decision. There was never a guidance part of it. So this plays into our story because he never was confirmed. He never really came into the church. And that was fine because it was meant to be later and we were meant to do it together. So we get married, and you know, marriage sometimes isn't all rosy, and like we figured that out pretty quickly. Like, oh, I'm living with this person now, and okay, and we missed out on a lot of key conversations that we probably should have had. So I decided to take a job in Milwaukee our first year of marriage. I mean, obviously that's what you do when you're newlyweds, and he stayed in Green Bay. So I saw him sometimes on the weekends, like I'd come home and clean and then see him. And, you know, I went on my daily life. We still kind of did our own things. We weren't like married. We weren't doing things together. After that job, then I just came back and I was doing some other stuff. But at this point too, outside of being married, I was being introduced to different people when I moved back to Green Bay in the Catholic community. And I think they were planted in those seeds were starting to be planted way back then, of people that I would meet, and I'd be like, those wackadoodle Catholics, man, they're always like telling me something, and how horrible, like what I'm doing, and by the way, I look back, they were not saying I was horrible, they were not saying horrible things. They were trying to tell me the beauty of the Catholic faith, but I I didn't want to hear it. I had no interest, zero interest. I mean, don't even talk to me about I'm changing my faith. I'm totally fine with where I am. And I mean, I adamantly opposed listening to any of those people. But it was at this time, I started meeting a different group of people. In DC, no one cares about what denomination you are. They want to know who do you work for and what's your job in their office, right? I mean, that's what they care about. Not if you go to church on Sunday, not if you actually live out your faith every day when you're in the office. They didn't care about any of that. But I started meeting these people, and some of them played very big roles in me becoming Catholic as well. One was my sponsor, one was my husband's sponsor. And again, I didn't talk to them about the faith thing, because I was like, just really leave me alone on that. I don't need it. So we continued being married. I went to church every Sunday. He joined me on that Christmas and Easter. And you know what? It wasn't that great. Life wasn't that great. And if you ask my husband today why we're still married, he would credit it to my faith that I have. I began praying for my husband. I'd never done that before. And there was a time where it would have been a lot easier to walk away from each other than actually work on this and stick it out. No, he came from a divorced family. There's no one in his family his grandparents stayed married, but out of his mom's side of the family, every single relative was divorced. His mom, dad had been divorced. Everyone was remarried. I didn't understand that. I was like, hey, my parents had it rough, but they worked through it. Like, that's what you do in a marriage. So it could have been really easy for us to just part ways and be like, hey, good luck with your life, good luck with mine. But that's not what it was. I prayed and prayed and prayed. And again, still, I wasn't interested in becoming Catholic. So then the marriage is good. Then we want to have kids. Well, doesn't everyone think, okay, I'm ready to have kids, like, let's make it happen. All my friends were having kids, and I wasn't. And I thought, well, what's going on? Well, we're having difficulties. We experienced infertility. And let me tell you, that's something that either brings you together as a couple, or it can just bring you apart. But for us, it brought us together. And it also began our discussion of, when we have children, how will we raise these children? What faith will we raise these children in? And again, I was still at the point of, I'm okay with being Methodist. So we struggle. And at that point, people were like, why don't you have kids? You've been married for like 8 years. What's wrong with you? It's like, well, we didn't tell everyone. We're having difficulties. So after a year or so of just trying, then we sought help from our doctor. And it was about this time that we bought this new house. It wasn't really new. It was old. And as Father Gujarati likes old things, we like old things too. Little did we know, so it was an estate sale. So lesson learned, don't buy a house from an estate sale anymore. It was a great house. Don't get me wrong. We love this house. We've been looking for a house for like a year, and every house we go in, we're like, nah, something's not right about this one. Well, God had a plan. All in place of this one. We walked in, we're like, yes, perfect. It's got 3 bedrooms. It has 2.5 bathrooms. It needs a lot of work, but we're good with that kind of stuff. We love remodeling. So we buy this house, and this was in early August of that year, and we began the remodeling. You should also know, my husband at this time was in the state assembly, so he wasn't always home, but he happened to be home this one night. And I'm a restless sleeper. Like, really, I'm a wild dreamer. I can never really tell if my dreams are real when I wake up in the morning or not. So there was one night where I don't think it was a dream, but I'm pretty sure someone maybe from the old house was still in this house. ridiculous, you're crazy, you need some help, go get some psycho drugs and you should be fine. And I don't want to tell my husband, I'm like, I'm not really, like, was I dreaming? Am I going crazy? I was not drinking that night, so it was not that, because we're still trying to have kids at this point, so I wasn't drinking. And so a couple days went by, but then I was like, oh my gosh, he's going to Madison, I'm going to be in this house alone, like, I don't know, maybe I should say something to him. So I said something, and I was like, yeah, you know, something's weird here too. Do you think you should call Kate? She's going to know what to do. So Kate's a friend of ours. And I said, listen, I'm not Catholic, I have no interest in this, whatever, but I know you're going to find someone for me to come to my house because you Catholics, you have all the answers on this stuff. And so she gave me, she first of all came right over to my house. She's like, here is a statue of Mary, here's a prayer you should be saying, and this is what you should be saying, and I've got a number here for you for someone. I'm like, okay, I'm following what you're telling me because this stuff is cuckoo land, and I need to live in this house. And again, I'm not really sure what it was, but whatever it was putting actions into motion at this place. And I don't know if any of you recently read, there's an article in the Compass. I started laughing out loud in my office when I read this, but they were talking, are ghosts real? And they're talking about how Satan puts them out there in order for you to come away from the church. I'm like, ha, funny on you, because I'm not a Catholic, because of whatever was in my house. So if that's the case, you really backfired on you. So I was like, I don't know who this priest is, but he's gonna come over, Chad, and I don't know what's gonna, and I mean, just so you know, you're the first priest, pastor, anyone outside of a family member who is coming to our home. So we're like, what do we do? Like, should we have coffee? Are we supposed to have like dinner? You know, like, should we have snacks out for this? Like, we're at a complete loss. Now, I was not going to call my friend back and be like, okay, now what's the protocol on this kind of stuff? But I knew as soon as I opened our front door, there was something about Father Girardi. Our dog did not even bark at him. I'm serious. And this dog is crazy. So I was like, wow, he's got something about him. I'm not sure. We'll see if it works in the house. So, like you said, came in, did this. He went to each room. What he doesn't fully know, it was something he actually said when he was in our home that day that when he left, I was like, yep, sign me up for RCIA classes. We're in this, 110%. Like I said, we were trying to have children, and we hadn't been able to conceive. He walked into our spare bedroom where our dog had been laying on the bed. So he said something along the lines of, pretty soon you're going to be sharing that room with someone else. Father Girardi knew zero about Chad and I, other than we needed this house blessing. He did not know we had been struggling and struggling and struggling to have children. There was no, I didn't have any kind of tests out or anything. But 2 days after he left, I had a positive pregnancy test. And that room that he was in was meant to be the baby's room. I was like, oh my gosh, Chad. He knows, and he doesn't even know he knows. So I literally looked at Chad and I said, I think, it's September, from what I can find, these RCIA classes or whatever they are, they start. We got to get on board, because now we're having kids, and we need to be Catholic before they're born. Just so you know, anything that we do is always on a time crunch in our house. Our last baby that we had, we again didn't have a house to live in, so we built a house and literally got moved in the day before we had our son. So we like to wait last minute as long as possible for anything. We happen to know who was leading up the RCIA program at the cathedral in Green Bay, so we went out to dinner with them. And Chad and I were like, yep, we want to do this. And we wanted to do it together. This is the beautiful part of where we are in our faith journey together. We did it together. We had never done faith together. I had started praying for my husband, but now we prayed together. That's something we never did. So we went to these classes. My husband, totally drank a lot of Mountain Dew or Diet Mountain Dew during these classes to stay awake. I, at the time, I was growing, my stomach was getting really big really fast, and I was does a pregnant lady really get this big that fast? And my mom was like, you're eating too much. And I was like, wow, Mom, thanks, I'm pregnant. That's really nice of you to say I'm fat. When I did have an eating disorder before, and now I'm pregnant, you're telling me I'm fat. Awesome, thanks, Mom. So little did we know, we were having twins. So our two oldest are twins. But now during this time, my parents were like, what are you doing? Your husband's not really that committed to this. I'm like, Mom, Dad, we're doing this together. This is our journey together as husband and wife, as us becoming parents. He wants to be in his faith with me. So we went to all those classes. And the best part would be going out to breakfast after Mass. We joke with our kids all the time. We go back to the restaurant we always went to. We're like, guys, you were here for a good 8 months eating every Sunday after we had class and Mass. And our kids still don't appreciate that fact. But, and it's a lot harder now that we have 4 kids to take them out to that restaurant. But the other thing that we really, really thought was important was we were married in the Methodist church. We wanted to be married in the Catholic church. We met with Father Girardi. Now, I'm pregnant with twins, right? I was big. Imagine a lady out to here. That's how I was. And in our discussions, it was, are you open to children? Are you open to life? I don't know, Father Girardi, were we? But it was beautiful. So we were then married. Our children were born in May of that year. So I always remember how long I've been Catholic. I think of how old our twins are. So I'll be celebrating 8 years in the Catholic Church this Easter. Our children assume, even though they know Grandma and Grandpa are not Catholic, that I was raised Catholic. They're like, wait, Mom, what are you talking about? You weren't always Catholic? I said, no, I wasn't. Now, the beauty continues in our life, in our journey. So Father Girardi and I did not just part ways after RCIA classes and coming into the church. Although I do remember when you left the cathedral, I thought you were just leaving for the summer again, and clearly my state of mind was maybe I was sleep deprived from the children I had or something. She was like, no, Heather, he's leaving. I was heartbroken. Just heartbroken. But there's always a season in life. And now Father Girardi is very instrumental in the school that our children go to. So our children go to St. John Paul II Classical School in Green Bay. It was one of those dreams of a school. A lot of people wanted it, but it wasn't there yet. So we finally had these children, and you'll have to understand, because of some things that happened while my husband was in the assembly, I was not interested in sending our children to a public school, but I also didn't know where to send them. And then, you know what, that same lady that gave me his phone number in the beginning was like, Heather, there's this great school that's going to be starting, and you really should think about sending your children there. So now, our children go to this amazing Catholic classical school in Green Bay. In fact, I know that we're talking with some Xavier folks of how we get the high school going in our future. But our children, I'm so excited. Our twins this year are having their first reconciliation, their first communion. I didn't get to go through any of that stuff. You know, as a Protestant, you go through confirmation. And it's, you know, you're older when you do that. So I didn't really understand the whole beauty of learning it. And let me tell you, our kids with Miss Johns, we do the catechesis of the Good Shepherd in our school, and my mind is like this on a regular basis of what my kids, the discussions we have. I was like, oh my gosh, when I was your age, I was like drawing snowmen at church or something, not understanding this. We were talking about sins and good choices you make as we're prepping for all of this. So I think it's really exciting for Chad and myself to be there with our children in this journey, because it's not something, Chad did that part of it, but I didn't. So I'm enjoying knowing that we are creating the saints, right? That's my job now as a mom, is to ensure I do all I can for our children to get them where we need to have them. So we have, let me go back to how many kids we have. So we have the twins. After the twins, I really thought God gave us 2 kids because that's all we're going to be able to have. And I thought, okay, He gave us 2 at once, this is easy, done. But I longed for more children, and so did Chad. It was like, oh my gosh, we didn't understand how much love we could have for other human beings that are our children. So we, once again, tried, finally got pregnant. So excited, so excited. Then, on Christmas Eve, the year that we found out, we were at my parents' house with our kids, celebrating with our family. Things weren't right. Like, I was cramping, just, I was like, something's off. My sister's a veterinarian. I'm like, listen, I'm not a dog, but something's not right. She's like, yeah, you gotta go to the hospital, Heather. So, Christmas Eve, we lost our baby. But I think, again, God had a plan. I'm like, you know what? Our baby is going to be waiting for us. Our baby is surrounded by other loved ones. They're being cared for until we get there. So now my job on earth is to ensure I get to heaven as well, because I want to hold that baby. So after that, I was kind of like, I'm kind of done with the kid thing. Like, I don't think I can take that loss again. And then, surprise, we're open to life, right? I mean, that's what we're all about. We got pregnant with our daughter. And I was not excited. I was like, oh, yeah, I don't want to get connected to this baby. I'm just going to ignore that I'm even pregnant. And you should know, when this happened, I was the legislative director at Wisconsin Right to Life when I lost our 3rd baby. And I didn't even tell my boss. Like, I was like, yeah, I'm just going to take a few more days on vacation. Is that okay? And then I finally came back, and I was a hot mess. I'm like, yep, I lost my baby. I didn't tell anyone even that we were pregnant. So God's joke on me is this. I find out I'm pregnant with Cecilia as I was offered the job to become executive director of Wisconsin Right to Life. I was like, wow, a pro-life organization, and I'm pregnant. What better job could I have, right? What better role model could I be for welcoming life than being pregnant as I take on this new role? And then I thought, oh my gosh, I'm the executive director. How am I going to have a baby? And I'm like, oh yeah, we bring babies wherever we go. I was like, I can have this kid. And I'm one of those people where I have babies and I get back to work. I'm like, I don't like to sit around. I love my babies, but if they're attached to me and I can bring them with me, I can do anything. And trust me, when you have twins, you're like, oh, I'll wear one here, I'll wear one on my back, do you have an arm? I'll give you one of those kids. So I was like, okay, fine. I'm going back to work. That Cecilia went everywhere with me. She went to Madison and lobbied with me. She slept in my office in Madison with me. Everyone in the office held this baby. They're like, yes, finally someone has another baby in the office that we can hold. Which today we also have a baby. It's not mine, but occasionally have a baby. So that was awesome. There's another baby. And then I was still kind of like, okay, maybe now I was okay with that one. Maybe we should have one more kid. So now our little Hans is here with us as well. He got to travel with Mom too. So at our 50th anniversary party for Wisconsin Right to Life, I was like ginormous again. I'm always ginormously pregnant at just the right moments, I think. And then Hans is here, and then I told Father Girardi a little while ago, my husband and I are a little bit older, and my husband's 47, I'm 42 now, and we're like, maybe, you're going to be like 64 when Hans is 18. Maybe, we shouldn't try for more children. I'm like, I'm just going to get rid of all the kid stuff. I mean, the joke's going to be on us probably when we have another kid. But we're always open to life. And part of this idea, I always wanted children. I never knew how many children I actually wanted. But the idea of being open to life in the Catholic faith is something that is so beautiful and so amazing. And I wish all of us could really understand. I think the beauty of me becoming a Catholic as an adult is I really understood more of what some of the church's teachings were. That's what angered me when I was growing up. I was like, oh, you're like a cafeteria Catholic of you do this, but you don't do this. You're okay with this, but you're not okay with this. I'm like, I'm not sure about that. So the beauty of life in our faith is we care about the child from the moment of conception until natural death. That's what I get to work on every single day of my life. Protecting the most vulnerable amongst us. That's what we as Catholics should be doing as well every day, right? Regardless if we take politics out of this discussion. That's not what life is. Life isn't determined by an R or a D or an I or whatever it is behind your name. Life is cherished and valued by all of us. And as Catholics, we need to ensure that everyone understands that. Now, I do not work for an organization that is based off of one particular denomination. We welcome all faiths, no faiths, whatever you are. Atheists come and join us in protecting life. That's not who we are. But I am able to take my faith each day with me to work by the acts I do. I don't have to tell people that I am Catholic, but you will see by the acts that I do, by helping people, sharing the message of life, whether it's at the beginning of life, it's in the end of life. I get to do that each and every day. And it doesn't matter who you are. Now, over my years, in my younger years, I would have told someone that if you have an unplanned pregnancy, well, that's probably dumb on your part because there's lots of ways to avoid that. Now my job is, how do I ensure this baby continues to live? And whether mom and dad, birth parents, keep this child, or how do we make an adoption plan for them? How do we offer an alternative? My mindset is completely different in my approach to work, just like it was in my approach to what I faithfully believed. It was easy for me to leave the Methodist Church. I'll say that when it finally went like this for me, it was pretty easy for me. Some of what they're going through in a transition as the church themselves are just not where my belief system is any longer, and life was not as important to them as what I saw in the Catholic Church. And this is well before, I became Catholic well before I started working at Wisconsin Right to Life. It just happens that life was so beautiful and truthful, and it was there. And I don't think other faiths necessarily put it as a priority. You know, I love our idea of, when we talk about social justice, we care about someone who has a baby but needs emergency rent. At Wisconsin Right to Life, that's what we help someone through. I don't care how this child came into existence. I care that you keep them and do not kill your child, and we can help you through this. That's what we care about. So, what do we do? And think of this as Catholics, think of it in your everyday life. Do you run into people who maybe have been in a situation you're kind of like, ways to avoid that, right? We need to think of how do we help them through that situation. So what do we do at Wisconsin Right to Life to encourage someone to keep their child? How many of you work with pregnancy centers? All right, there's a few hands. All right. Staff doesn't count. Or you do count, just kidding. So if you don't know about a pregnancy center, Appleton's got some great ones. Vita just expanded their scope a little bit. But a pregnancy center is a great resource for a woman who might be seeking an abortion. I neglected to bring the cards that we have, but I will give some to Ann, so if you come next time and give it out to your parishes. But our ultimate goal is I have zero training in walking a woman through choosing life versus an abortion. But these pregnancy centers that are located all across our great state of Wisconsin, they offer the alternative to women. So instead of going to a Planned Parenthood clinic, which praise be to God, you closed the one down here in Appleton, instead of going there, we're going to send them to a pregnancy center where they can get parenting help, where they can see their unborn child via an ultrasound. So we spend great resources getting a woman through those doors instead of an abortion clinic. I won't go into nitty-gritty details. I get very excited about the technology we use at Wisconsin Right to Life of sending a message to a woman in a Planned Parenthood facility for the alternatives that she might have. But I highly encourage you, if you're not familiar, get involved with something like the pregnancy centers. Get involved with hospice care. Get involved, Tim in our office, who's here, who, by the way, looks like Santa. He volunteers in hospice. That is something when we can offer a dignified end to life for people, that is a beautiful, beautiful tribute to their life. We are not just about beginning of life. We're all life. We want to protect those with disabilities. We want to ensure that euthanasia doesn't happen here in our state. Those are all things that we need to work on. But like I said, I'm not someone that's going to throw my faith at you in my daily job. Something important to know about me is I'm not someone who recites Bible verses. You know, there's a lot of people that's how they share their message. I am like the worst person ever at memorizing anything. So I'd probably screw up whatever I was trying to say if I went that route. But now my girls are like, oh, just give me that Bible, Mom. I can find that verse for you. And last night we were doing some workbook, and our little Emma was like, oh, Mom, I can find Luke. It comes after. And then I was like, oh my gosh, you're like this amazing child that must not be mine. But I know she is. So I think we can, each and every one of us can kind of put into practice our faith. Think about the homeless. This is something that is awesome, what some of our college campus groups are doing. They're actually having clothing drives for homeless shelters. Now, for the pro-life movement, that's pretty like outside the box, because people ask me on a regular basis if I stand on a street corner all day long. And that's not a joke. That's what they think the pro-life movement is. We're so much more than that. We're so much more than anything of that sort. Now, what I do look forward to is seeing where my journey continues to take me. I'm not going to lie, there are days where you can feel Satan at work against you. And there's been a couple these last couple weeks, and I'll look at my husband, I'm like, I just don't know why I do what I do. I have 4 kids at home. My job is in Milwaukee. I live in Green Bay. Like, really? Why am I doing this? And then those drives to Milwaukee offer me prayer time. And when I'm having one of those days, I always turn my life back to prayer now. It's not something I used to do. There was a time, I was at something with Father Rocky, Relevant Radio must have been having one of their fundraisers or something. And Father Rocky said, you know what you do when you rent a car? Always get out and put 11:50 a.m. on. I was like, wow, that's like the best advertisement for yourself I've ever heard. I don't have a radio station, so I cannot do that. But there was a day, like, it was a really bad day. Like, I was kind of like, oh my gosh, it's like 7:30 and I'm going to pick up my rental car. And I just, like, I already want to go back to bed. and I haven't even started my work day. And I got in that rental car, and 11:50 a.m. was on. It's like, oh, what a jokester you are, because you knew I needed that this morning. So it's like those little things in life that I don't see as God talking to me, but I know He's planting seeds. In fact, I skipped kind of a big portion of how I got to Wisconsin Right to Life. I was happy at a job that did not require me to work a whole lot. I had twins, and I was like, oh, I only have to go to Milwaukee, north side of Milwaukee, maybe once or twice a week, stay for a couple hours. My mom watches those kiddos while I'm gone. I got an easy job. I actually trained people how to run for political office at the time. If you can't tell, I'm like a total political dork. And that's what my life was. So I was completely happy, but we were always on the hunt for people that we could train, because we had to show some numbers. Like if we wanted our funder to keep funding us, we needed to prove that we were worth what we're doing. So there was a day that the guy I was working with was like, why don't you call up that Wisconsin Right to Life and see if they've we can come train at something for them. Like, sure, I know Sue and Barb, I'll give them a call, I used to work with them. Well, wouldn't you know that day he asked me to call them, one of their emails had come out and it said Sue Armacost, who had been the legislative director, was retiring. I'm like, not a coincidence at all. But I wasn't looking for a job. Again, I said I had it pretty easy. I didn't have to work too hard. They paid me, they actually paid me too much for the little work that I did. I kind of felt bad. But I kept going to work every day. So I called. Actually, I may have actually forgotten to call, because I got caught up in this whole, there's a job opening, and it's legislative stuff, and okay. So I thought, I went home, talked to my husband. He was in the assembly at the time. We had no children. And I was like, Chad, do you think maybe I should apply? I've got a lot of legislative experience. When I worked for Margarine, I handled we called it the women's issue, because no one really wanted to call abortion what it really was. I'm like, I worked out in DC during partial birth abortion. I get it. I can figure this stuff out. And he's like, well, what harm does it do? You can always apply, and then if they don't hire you, you still have a job, so it doesn't really matter. So I thought about it for a while. I'm like, okay, whatever. I don't even have an updated resume. It'll take 5 minutes, and that sounded like a lot of work. And I was, I didn't have a kid, so I had no excuse to be tired, right? So I did, and literally the next day, I get a phone call from Barb Lyons, and I'm like, well, that's weird. I did apply for a job, so it's really not that weird, right? That someone called me. I'm like, yeah, we want to interview you. I'm like, okay. You don't have anyone better than me? No one? Little did I know, they actually had been looking for someone for some time, and for whatever reason, it wasn't a coincidence that day I happened to see that advertisement for that job. It was just that finally in my life, maybe I was paying attention to those signs that I should have been paying attention to long ago. So I applied for that job, did the interviews, got the job, and I'm like, nuts! Now I'm gonna have to show up at the office 3 days a week, all day, and they're gonna expect me to work the entire time. Unlike this job I was leaving, where it's no one really paid attention to what I was doing, I kind of made up the job myself. And then I get there, and I'm loving it. The staff was amazing, the work was great. I actually, quite frankly, had no idea outside legislative stuff what Wisconsin Right to Life did. So, it was kind of like a learning lesson for me at that time, right? And it was, just a couple months. So I started in September. It was maybe that February. Barb Lyons lost her son. He tragically died. And a short time after that, she's like, I'm retiring. And I thought, well, I guess my time here at Wisconsin Right to Life is done then. Because I kind of came here so you could mentor me in this job, and now Sue, who's the legislative director, is gone, who had all this knowledge. Now you're going to leave me. I'm like, who's the crazy that's going to come in and lead this place? I had no intention of applying for the job, none whatsoever. And one day, Barb called me and was like, why haven't you turned in your resume yet for the executive director job? I said, well, I'm highly underqualified. I just started working here. You have like 30-some years of experience. I'm sure there's someone more knowledgeable on this issue, who's been in this movement for much longer than me that could do this. Well, then I started interviewing and I was getting annoyed. I'm like, okay, I'm on the third interview. Like, either you give me the job or like it's not gonna happen. So finally they offered me the job then. And here I am, again, never planning this. I thought I was gonna be the single girl living in DC. I had wanted to be a lobbyist when I lived in DC, and I wanted to work for Concerned Women of America. Don't ask me why, but it appealed to me at that time in my life. And I was like, awesome, now I'm a lobbyist, but I get to fight for life every day. And that's the great work I get to do. I, again, wasn't looking for it, but I paid attention to those signs. People were telling me to do something. I didn't see some of it, but those seeds had been planted for me. It was, what was I going to do with them? Was I going to nurture them? Or was I going, just like my marriage, which could have been easy to walk away from. And I am so thankful. Chad and I just had this conversation the other day. Like, oh my gosh, could you imagine like where our life would be had we not gone through our RCIA class together? Would we be here together? Would we have all these kids? And now we're at the point where we're like, oh my gosh, we have so many kids, you might as well just have more. If we would have started having kids, really, when we first got married, like if that's where we were in life, we probably would have like 20 kids by now. I think Chad might be dead, but that's how our faith completely changed our outlook on life. And I'm so thankful and so blessed to have that change. And now as we go forward, I'm going to continue to work in each way that I possibly can to ensure that our children see, like by acts of mom and dad, what good works are. We let our children basically make their own decisions with our guidance, right? But this is a bad thing. That school is awesome until like your kids understand how to make arguments back to you, and you're like, I knew there was going to be payback for that school at some point, and it's starting now. The 7-year-olds, even our 4-year-old, who it's awesome because we have a Montessori program now at the school, so she's 4. And she'll want to come home and do everything on her own, whereas like when we had the twins, I was that first-time mom where I wouldn't let them do anything. Like I literally caged them out of the kitchen because I didn't want them like near pots and pans even. And now I'm like, oh, Cece, the drawer's over there. And now that Hans is here, I'm like, if he's up the stairs, I'm sure someone's going to get him. But they have this ability to critically think and share these arguments with us, but they also critically think about their faith, which is amazing to me. If I can offer any advice for anyone who has kids or grandkids, if they're not in faith right now, be that role model for them. I'm so glad that my parents were that role model, even though my parents were completely upset with me becoming Catholic, which, I mean, some days they get over it, some days are like, Heather, which my parents are also unhappy with the Methodist Church, so I believe I'm just going to plant those seeds for them on a regular basis. They're never going to become Catholic, but I can only hope. We're getting them to the Wells Lutheran at least, so we're getting them a little bit back in the right direction. I figure Tim, once, I joke with Tim because he's not quite there yet, but we've got some years on him. I always joke with my parents, I'm like, I mean, you're at the Wells Lutheran, it's pretty, like, you're pretty close. Like, you just have to go to some classes, and then you can be one of us.
Tell them I'll come and bless their house.
There you go. Father Trotty said he's going to come and bless their house, which they're getting a new heater tomorrow, so they may need something done in their home. But at least now with my parents, where we're coming from. I find now when I talk with people who have the same kind of arguments I had, like I pray straight to God. You're talking about having Patrick McGarland. Madrid, sorry, thank you. He was some of you were at the St. Gianna Clinic, I think. And he was talking about, the fallacies of what Protestants think about Catholics. And everything he hit on was like, yeah, man, that was totally me. Like, you Catholics were just crazy. Like, again, not praying to God, you got the middleman, and every argument he had, I was so on board. I was like, yeah, man, I'm Protestant, and I'm sticking to it. And now I'm like, oh wait, I totally understand it now. We have to do a better job of explaining who we actually are as Catholics. This is what I have now for you as a former Protestant to becoming a Catholic is we actually need to explain things. If someone would have done that to me as a younger person, I would have been like, oh, now I maybe understand what you're talking about. I maybe don't believe what you believe, but at least I could understand it a little bit. So I think we need to do that. So whether it's talking about what we believe, how we pray, who we pray to, we don't idolize statues, right? Mary might be in my laundry room right now because that's the safest place for her when I have young children. We had her in a different location. This is a very special Mary. It was my husband's grandmother's. So I'm like, oh my gosh, they've entrusted it to us. If I break it now, I don't know what's going to happen. So it was literally in my laundry room where kids don't go because there's clean clothes in there. Why would they go with me? If you have to put it away, I'm pretty sure I got something else to do. But let's talk about what we do believe in and how we do believe in it. But those are the same things when I come to my everyday work life too. The whole idea of being pro-life. How many of you participated in 40 Days for Life? All right, man, that's awesome. I know we all can't do it. But the show of hands there shows me how much commitment there is to life in here. But what we also need to show people is we are not people standing on a street corner screaming at people and telling them they're horrible. No, we're praying for you. We're praying for your baby. We're offering you an alternative. So if we can speak the truth about our faith, if we can speak the truth about life and how we care for people from the moment of conception until natural death, I think we're going to move mountains in this world. Now, there's a lot of studies lately about people losing their faith, right? And it continues to grow. So how do we here in this room turn that around? Now, I'm doing my best with my 4 kids, okay? But I can't replace the whole world and repopulate for everyone. I mean, I would if I could, but I can't. So we need to do a better job. We need to do a better job communicating who we are. And if you talk about how we do pray, what we do, what we believe in, bring those talking points about. I think people understand who we are as Catholics. We have the truth on our side, and that's what we need to be communicating. Otherwise, you're going to continue to have people like me who is Protestant, perfectly happy, until some stranger came knocking at my door to help me out. So, thank you. I think we'll open it for questions at this point. Thank you.
How can we do a better job of standing strong as faithful Catholics who support life from conception to death when, statistics, 50% of Catholics already contracept and vote for the abortion platform? Pope Francis fully endorses the United Nations 2030 agenda of population control and worldwide abortion and contraception.
So I don't know about the Pope Francis thing, but I think what we need to do, and what I hope that I reflect, at least on my better days, and I think we've seen with Heather this evening, is a joyful spirit. The more that we can be joy-filled, cheerful Christians, strong in our faith, unyielding to the pressures of the world, but to be cheerful about it. the better ambassadors we can be. Having a long face, being bitter, angry, nasty, is not going to win anybody to Jesus Christ, especially these days. So I'm not advocating that we're Pollyannish about it, but whatever can be done by smiling, we ought to do. And to be unyielding in our principles of the respect for life and the love of our faith, but to do it with a cheerful heart. I think that wins the day every time. I know in my work at the diocese, to be cheerful about things. Even my work in parishes, I've served in all sorts of parishes with different dynamics. If one can be joyful, cheerful, best we can, that wins the day. I think that's your experience too with the work that you do.
It absolutely is. When we can offer hope and love to anyone, that's how we do our best work. What I found too, working with churches of all denominations, there are some priests, pastors who are more willing to speak openly on life. And then there's others who would rather not make that a topic. So find people within those parishes who would be willing to join in that effort to share those messages. Because we know what the church's teachings are on this. And I'll tell you, as a convert, part of my frustration was I had all these Catholic friends who were on birth control. I'm like, wait a minute. From my understanding, that's not part of being Catholic. So I had great difficulties with that. And I think, maybe as Catholics we can start reminding our friends and our sisters and brothers what the church teaches. In a friendly, respectful way.
Every time that I've preached on the church's teaching regarding openness to life, especially the teaching on birth control, I did so after I knew the people who I was shepherding, and they knew me. But the biggest upsetness that I got were people who were angry because they'd never heard this teaching before. Why didn't they know when they were younger? They would have made different choices. They felt cheated. One person said to me, I've been Catholic for 40 years, I haven't heard this ever. And so I think that pray for priests that we can have a little more courage to speak the truth. And nudge us to do so. We need or kick us in the behind to do it too.
I'm going to tell a kind of a nice story, and Heather knows my daughter lives in Washington, D.C., and she and her husband went through marriage prep, and I found it was fascinating, you talking about the stuff that you never talked about. The Catholic Church does a fabulous job in a lot of ways preparing people for the sacrament of marriage with the focus and things like that. When my daughter and now son-in-law went through this process in Washington, D.C., they were, we have to go to this, it's a full Saturday morning, 4 Saturday mornings, and they're going to cover all these things, including natural family planning. It was the most amazing thing, because I got these phone calls after they went, and my son-in-law is not Catholic, but they both raved about the quality of the preparation that they were getting in this marriage class, including my daughter went through all Catholic schools, and she graduated from Catholic University Law School, and she'd never heard any of these things. So it really is, I think, a credit to the church. They have those things, but we do need to make sure some of these continue to be talked about, because if you don't go through that process, you're not hearing it. So, questions?
In my over 80 years, I don't believe I've ever heard the word abortion come from the pulpit. In fact, I started a campaign back in June. I wrote to the bishop. He did respond, sorry. But I've been challenging him, and I found there's another bishop in Rockford, Illinois, that has refused to give communion to the legislators that passed about the strictest abortion bill in Illinois. And I just heard the other day that Joe Biden's priest didn't communion. So basically, my campaign is to try to get something from the pulpit. And at least, well, I wrote a letter to the Compass for one thing. 3 weeks went by and it wasn't published. So I presume that they thought it was too political. They responded by having an article basically saying that we can't afford to lose our tax exempt status. We want to touch that.
Well, I commend you for your campaign. I can only speak for myself, but as a priest, I've preached on the subject of abortion many times. And I think that a number of my brothers have. Some of my brothers are afraid to do so because they don't want to hurt people, alienate parishioners. They don't want to have a problem. They don't want to have people angry at them. They want people to like them. All of the normal human reactions. They're unfortunate reactions, but it's sometimes pastors are like parents. The last thing they want to do is to get their kids angry because they're tired. But then, of course, if you don't discipline your children, you're going to have a big problem later on. And so, but I think the numbers of priests who do speak on it is not negligible. They're out there.
Well, I think it should come from the bishop. And what I proposed to him was, I know you can't be political, but in this day and age with the two parties, there is such a big difference.
Yeah.
And what I would propose is that at least Sunday before the election, every priest ask, before you pull that lever, ask yourself, can I vote for the party that supports partial birth abortion?
So if I can speak as someone up in Green Bay, actually Bishop Ricken has done a very nice job, not telling us who to vote for, but what the issues are that are important. But this is one thing I found. Bishop Ricken has done a great job, but some priests have chosen to read the letter and then others based off of where they are. So what we as parishioners need to do is support our priests in these efforts. If we're not standing with them and saying, we want you to read this, they're reading who is there. And if we're not directly telling them, no, we support you in this, we're praying for you on this, then it may be that they don't feel it's as important or they don't have the support to do that.
There's a lot of fear out there today. And there's a fear in part of the faithful, but there's also a fear in the clergy. And so the more we can support each other, I think the better things will be.
I have a quick question. We're in the Alpha group right now, and we're talking about what this gentleman was talking about, where the people were being denied communion. And I was saying something about, well, because they're pro-abortion, they're being denied communion. And I got pretty much chewed out in front of the whole class because the woman leading this said, no one on this planet is pro-abortion. They're pro-choice. You cannot even use that term. I'm like, do I live in a bubble or something? I thought there were people who were pro-abortion. Am I just like, I didn't even know what to say to her. I was just so taken aback.
So it's all about terminology when it comes to life. I mean, I learned that the hard way when I both worked in D.C., working on this issue. I mean, in our office, we called it the women's issues. We couldn't even call it life issues. We couldn't call it abortion. They want to win the game on terminology. It sounds much better to say pro-choice, right? Than pro-abortion.
Who could be against it? Everybody likes choice. Right. Chocolate, vanilla, strawberry. Who could be against it? He who controls the language controls the argument. Again and again and again. Tolerance, diversity, choice, love, family. Who could be against these things? But what's the definition? Exactly. That's the key.
Exactly. So you are right on. They're just trying to take the message from them.
Thank you.
Tonight on Relevant Radio on the way home from work, they were talking about the pregnancy centers, and they were talking very much about how many lives they know they've saved, and again the terrific sonograms they give, and 98% success rate of those moms keeping their babies or giving them up for adoption. But I don't know that those numbers get out. And one of the things that was brought up in that conversation is that many women don't even know where to go. I mean, I'm older, I'd say look it up in the phone book, but, you know, what are they Googling? You know, they happen to stumble upon maybe a pregnancy center, but they don't know where to go. They don't know the name of the one you mentioned, Vita. You know, it's not like a name that's advertised across the country, you know, because everybody has a different little name. But there's more pregnancy centers than there are abortion clinics, but yet they get the press, so to speak.
Right, and you're absolutely right. The unfortunate thing with pregnancy centers is their bank accounts are not Planned Parenthoods, and they don't get your tax dollars. Well, some of them might, because now we've taken away Title X money. So Google ads are very expensive. They don't have that. So at Wisconsin Right to Life, we actually do the Google ads. There are some pregnancy centers that do that, and I'm a great example of not knowing that there's a pregnancy resource center in my community. When I was in college, I had a friend who came to me. She was supposed to get married. She told me she was pregnant. Now I look back on it, I mean, I think she was making the whole story up of whose baby it was, but I had no alternative to give her. I went to my mom and I'm like, I don't know what to do. My mom had no idea that there was a pregnancy center in Green Bay at the time, and it had been there for years. So you're right. How do we get the message out? Well, how many of you are on Facebook, so Instagram, any of those things? You need to start sharing. We need to be our own media, because the real world media is never going to pick up on that great story about the clinic here in Appleton who's offering those ultrasounds to women, or the STD testing, or whatever it is that they need here. They're not going to do that. So we need to become our own media, share that information. If you like us on Facebook, we post information. We have a website called 123givelife.com. We're also on Facebook now. Our whole promotion is to get people in those pregnancy centers.
Okay, I have a comment on the gentleman that was talking about the priests not being courageous enough to talk on the subject of abortion at Mass. And I think it's because it's a mixed audience. There's little children in there that maybe aren't of the age to hear this conversation. And
They're hearing an awful lot of stuff on this
well, little children I'm talking about. And also, I wanted to know if the blessing helped with the situation with your house.
Well, as far as I know, there may have been a day where I was almost certain that my back door was locked and it went flying open. So in my mind, I'm going to believe that it really was locked. It may have been unlocked and the wind blew, I don't know. But after that, we lived peacefully there. We don't live in that house anymore, but we never had anything else happen. I know, right? Good thing I kept your number handy, just in case.
I would like to say that we are the church, and we can take charge of what happens. I go to daily mass, and I asked that the prayer intention be that human life is respected from conception to natural death, and that went no place with the liturgy committee. So at daily mass,
When something goes to a liturgy committee, usually nothing happens. It's a truth.
So I decided to do a little reading and borrowed some words and put my own together, basically, that life is respected from conception to natural death and an end to abortion. So every daily mass, and Father asks what our intentions are, that's what I say. And this is really hard to say, but my late husband was an abortion survivor. And so that is extremely personal. It's very personable for me. And the other thing that we need to do is remember that all our priests are human just like we are. So say a Hail Mary for them every day. Say a prayer. No matter if you're washing the dishes, you're getting in your car, pray for our priests because they need our prayers. And we can do that.
Absolutely. We need to be there as their support.
We're all in this together. Somebody way in the back, too.
to say and encourage everyone, I think sometimes we forget the power that we hold as the laity. There's many more of us than there is anyone else, really, in any congregation in the world. And we have a voice in every nation on this planet. And so if we activate ourselves within our friend and faith community, and when we see and hear and know people who are in need in any walk of life, whether it be with pregnancy or with lack of faith or fallen away Catholic, any kind of struggle, we owe it to them to reach out to them and to talk to them about it and be courageous ourselves. And if we change that within ourselves and the laity and within our church congregation communities and within our family and friend little community outside of the church, we can move mountains. And when our priests see us do that, and when our priests and bishops see our congregations growing, and why are they growing, we can raise our hand and say, praise the Lord, we did that through the grace of God. So don't forget the power that we have as laity, and it's not up for us to point the finger at somebody else. It's, look in the mirror. So
I really appreciate that. I think there's a distinction that we've forgotten in recent times in the church, which is that the role of the priest, fundamentally, is to sanctify the laity. The role of the laity is to sanctify the world. And when we get that mixed up, we start stepping in each other and getting into all sorts of troubles. So we work at it together. We have different charisms. That's why it's so great for Heather and I to be up here together, because we come from different perspectives and different experiences, that same faith, same Lord, same baptism, and the call to evangelize the good news in life. We do that each in our own way, and we help each other as we help all of each other in preaching and living faith. So we're all in this together.
Okay, any other questions? Otherwise, I think both Heather and Father Girardi are willing to, one more, okay.
It's really not a question either. It's kind of relating to what that lady said back there, and actually Father also, and Heather. If you watched the movie Unplanned, when you saw those kids, that young couple, always encouraging Abby to be the best person she could be. They didn't do it with anger. They didn't do it with the Ripper, or whatever that guy was. They did it with love. So when she finally changed her mind, she knew where to go. And I think that's in every aspect of life here, with politics being so crummy and divided, diversity, ethnicity, all that stuff. If you do it again with love, you can change the world, really. Number two is, I know that Wisconsin Right to Life has pregnancy chapters everywhere. They're hurting, they need people. They can get into our churches, they can do beautiful things, rose sales, picnics for the people of the CARES, of the pregnancy helpline groups. They help these people keep the fire moving, and we need people in those groups, so find those groups. There's one in Appleton, there's a new one starting, I think, Tim, do you know where? There's a new one starting in Appleton, and they should be blooming. And there's one in Fond du Lac, I know there's one in Sheboygan, everywhere. Look for those groups, get on board with them, so you can help the old people that are on them, because I'm on it, and everybody is 80. I mean, well.
Thank you. Actually, that's a perfect setup too, because in the Wisconsin Right to Life bag here is the movie Unplanned. So there's a giving away a copy of it. But Heather did say that they have purchased the license to show it for 5 years. So if you have an organization, if you want to go back to your parish or a group, it's something that we're going to look into. We do have the reality of our rating, and Heather talked about that, and it's something that we have to figure out if that works here or not. But contact the organization if you're interested in, or can find places, because unplanned, the message in that is pretty amazing.